Are you a new player figuring out how to build your first team? Or maybe you have been playing for a while now and are trying to build a team around a new shiny character you just pulled. Or maybe you're a long-time player that doesn't really need this guide but just wants more Genshin content. Well, no matter which kind of player you are, new, bored or old, I got you. So without further delay, let me let you in on the secret. Make sure not to tell anyone, okay? It's just a secret between you and me. Come closer. Yes, a bit closer. Come on. Very good. Now. There are many variations and forms of sandwiches in the world, but today I'll be making a classic lettuce, tomato, and egg sandwich. For this recipe, the ingredients I'll be using are a hard-boiled egg, roughly 4 to 5 cherry tomatoes, a few lettuce leaves, mayonnaise, bread, and bread. Now to put this together, let's go layer by layer. First, let's start with our protein, then introduce the greens, squirt the sauce, and finally use the bread to prevent the others from escaping. And that's the sandwich complete. All that's left to do is ask, what the hell does making a sandwich have to do with team building in Genshin Impact? Nothing. Sandwiches have absolutely nothing to do with Genshin. I have just been addicted to them lately and somehow thought it would be a good analogy to explain team building with. So here we are. And since it's too late to turn back, here we go. Building a good team in Genshin Impact is like building a good sandwich. It's about balance. It's about having a good core on-field damage dealer, the protein, some damage coming off the field, veggies, spicy damage increasing buffs for your characters, sauce, and a good amount of survivability in the form of heals or shields to keep your team healthy and intact, like the bread does for a sandwich. You don't want too much of any component or you risk making an entirely different dish. Too much veggies and you got yourself a salad, too much bread and it's a really scuffed breakfast, and too much sauce and... yeah, I'm not gonna show that. Anyway, you want a really balanced sandwich and nothing else. I'll elaborate on that later. For now, let's take a look at this visual representation, grouping all the Genshin characters up till version 2.5 based on the aforementioned categories. Feel free to pause the video if you want a longer look. Keep in mind that these categories are very generalized and some characters could fit into multiple categories depending on the artifact and weapon builds, as well as how you choose to play them. But since this video is more for the beginner player base, this list should suffice. You know what doesn't suffice though? Just knowing what categories your characters fall into. You still have to actually build a team. It's pretty straightforward though once you know each of your characters' roles. My general guideline in how I personally choose my own teams is as follows. I will use no more than one character from the on-field damage dealer category, at least one damage buffing unit, at least one healing or shielding unit, or a unit that does both, and as many off-field damage dealers as possible. You'll see why later. Once again, this is a generalization, but I feel like it's a very good one-size-fits-all solution to team building. And all if not most teams created this way will be at least decent and pretty foolproof to operate. And if you're someone who can point out viable teams that are exceptions to this guideline, then well, you are probably someone who doesn't need this video. Once again, this video is very basic and meant to serve as an introduction to team building for new players. Now let's circle back and talk about why specifically a sandwich. Why do we need all these different elements like healers, on-field damage, off-field damage, and so on? Why not just stack 4 on-field damage dealers or 4 healers and shielders? Well, actually, before we go too far, I like to say that you don't actually need to follow this way of team building. Just like you can eat whatever you want when it comes to food, you can also build teams however you like. If you already have a team that consists of like 3 healers, this video is not meant to tell you that you cannot play it. Rather, it's more for those of you who are unsure and would like some general guidelines. I mean, we're talking about a game after all. And the best way to win is to have fun, so do what brings you the most fun. Anyway, the reason why it's good to separate characters into categories like this, and the reason why you don't want to use too many characters from a certain category, especially the on-field damage dealer and heal/shielder categories, is just this. It's unnecessary and wasteful. Imagine going to the cinema alone and buying tickets for 2 seats, even though you only have one butt, unless you consider each side of them to be independent, in which case you are doing the right thing. But assuming you consider your butt to be one entity, buying any more than one seat would be a waste of money, right? You only have one body after all, and you can't realistically sit in 2 seats at once unless you pull some sort of outright gymnastics in the cinema. Plus, if you don't spend money on the second unnecessary seat, you could save some money. Money which could then be spent on getting you some nice popcorn or a drink, converting what was a waste of money into something that actually enhances your movie-going experience. So similarly to how we only have one body to watch a movie with, we can only have one character on the field at a time, making it redundant 99% of the time to have more than one on-field damage dealer in your party, since you can't use multiple of them at the same time. As their name suggests, on-field damage dealers need to be on the field to do anything. They are completely useless and just take up valuable space by sitting on the bench. Having one is good though, but I wouldn't usually run more than one in any given team. Using the body analogy again, having too many healers or shielders on the team is unnecessary. Our characters only have a certain amount of HP, and when they are topped off, all heals will be, for the most part, useless. Having far more heals than necessary is like going to a fancy buffet, eating your fill, eating some more, then eating even more till you can barely walk, and then paying to enter another buffet just so that you can use their restroom to throw up all the food you've eaten. Same thing goes for shields. Shields don't stack on top of one another, so only your strongest shield matters. So it is not necessarily bad to overstack healers or shielders, it is just, once again, unnecessary. But at the same time, I would suggest having at least one character to keep your team healthy for a more comfortable experience. Unlike the lowly healers, shielders, and on-field damage dealers that are bound by their mortal coils, the Giga Chad off-field damage dealers and damage buffers aren't. Imagine being limited when you can have unlimited power! So it doesn't hurt to have many off-field damage dealing and damage buffing characters, whereas it sort of does to have too many on-field shielding or healing characters. However, especially in the early to mid game, you'd want at least one on-field damage dealer still, just due to the fact that it's way cheaper in terms of resin and resources to build one character, as opposed to the few off-field damage dealers you would need to have in order to compensate. So with that in mind, the key to good team building is all about finding the right balance between offense and defense, on-field and off-field damage. It's choosing characters that when put together, create a well-rounded unit. It's about having not too much, nor too little of any given part. Just like how it is if you want to create the perfect sandwich. Boom. Full circle. So now you know why I chose the sandwich analogy and also how to build your sandwich. Only one question remains. How to eat your sandwich, aka how to play the team you just made. Each team in the game is played differently, and I might make another video focusing on combat mechanics entirely. But for this video, I will try to boil down the very basics of using a team that I think can be safely applied to all teams in Genshin when it comes to playing them to their fullest potential. It's actually quite simple. You would want to use all your characters together. If a character's elemental burst is up, switch to them and then use it. If their skill is up, use it too. Then another character, elemental burst, elemental skill, another character, elemental skill, elemental burst, and just keep the cycle going, right? Just keep it flowing. Keep it flowing. And this basically goes back to what I was saying earlier about a character basically being redundant if they're not being used. So make sure they are being used, or else you may as well have a party with like 2 characters in it instead of 4. To show how this will work in an actual team composition, let's take a quick look at how to use one of the most popular teams in endgame and boss fights right now. This team is known to the community as the Raiden National and uses Raiden as the on-field damage dealer, Bennett as its damage buffer and healer, and Xiangling along with Xingqiu as its source of off-field damage. There are many synergies and mechanics at play here that make this team one of the best in Genshin, but the beauty of it is that it's still played like every other team in the game, in the sense that you would want to cast your damage buffing abilities first, in this case Bennett's burst, followed up by abilities that will allow your team to do off-field damage. Here it's Xiangling and Xingqiu's burst, and then finally switch to your on-field damage dealer, cast their skills and attack away. It's ordered this way because you generally want to stay on your on-field damage dealer for a while without switching characters once they take the field. So having everything prepared and set up to work alongside them before that can be crucial. Going back to the cinema analogy one last time, casting your buffs and off-field damaging abilities before taking the field with your on-field character is like buying drinks and popcorn before entering your movie, rather than buying them midway through or after. It just makes more sense that way. I didn't mention when you would use heals or shields, since in this case Bennett's burst heals as well as buffs damage, so this team will always be healthy in general. But in other teams, you would want to preemptively cast your shield first as soon as combat starts, while heals are more reactive in nature since you really only need to use them when your characters need it. Also notice how I cast my character's elemental skill before the elemental burst, which you already might be doing, and if so, keep doing it since it helps immediately refund some energy for your characters upon having their burst cast, which is a really good thing. Anyway, this is starting to turn into a full-fledged combat guide video, so that's all on that for now. At the end of the day, I think the thing I want to emphasize the most is just this. And that's to build a balanced team with field time in mind, and also not to be afraid of using your elemental skills and bursts as often as you can. If you can do these two things well, and maybe even start looking into the order in which you use your abilities, then you're definitely moving towards a fun and easy time with Genshin Impact. Well, at least in terms of team building and combat. That I can promise you. I stream every single day on Twitch, so feel free to hop by if you have any questions or would like to teach me how to make a better sandwich. It would be greatly appreciated. Good luck with team building. Bye bye.